like me, your introduction to the Ring franchise was the Scary Movie 3 parody version of it. As funny and iconic as that movie is,
Cindy, this bitch is messing up my floor!
we're gonna be focusing on the killer behind it all. In Scary Movie 3, she's presented as Tabitha. In the American version of the Ring franchise, however, it's Samara. In Dead by Daylight, however, we're gonna be discussing the original Japanese version of the vengeful ghost, Sadako Yamamura. My name is Meeplesson3, and welcome back to the Top 5 Build series. To start the video off, I like to go over the Onryo's lore and lore-based build before discussing what works best on them. In terms of the Onryo's lore, Sadako has enjoyed being in different mediums throughout the years, and with it has brought inconsistencies and changes to their lore, so I'm going to be giving a loose interpretation of it overall. Sadako was born in Japan to her mother, who had developed psychic powers that would catapult her and Sadako into the mainstream media when she correctly predicted that a volcano near where they lived would erupt. Her mother Shizuku would go to Tokyo to demonstrate her power with Dr. Aikumo, an academic who wanted to prove the existence of ESP. During the presentation, Shizuku is successful in proving her powers, but the reporters turn on her, believing her to be a fraud. When this happens, Sadako appears from backstage, and using her even stronger psychic powers, causes the reporter's heart to stop, thus killing him on the spot. Soon after this incident, her mother, Shizuko, would go to commit suicide by jumping into the very same volcano that she had predicted would erupt from the past. Sadako would disappear with Dr. Aikumo, who would later go on to knock her unconscious and throw her into the well in the hopes of killing her. The well was then covered up, leaving Sadako for dead. The problem was, Sadako didn't die when she fell, nor did she drown immediately afterwards, but she was alive and even attempted to crawl out, which is referenced to in her Bloody Nails add-on description. Before she died in the well, she would manifest her wrath with her psychic powers to become an Onryo, a vengeful ghost that would take the form of the videotape later on down the road. This is when the events of the Ring movie take place, and where the story of Sadako's counterpart in Dead by Daylight, Yoichi Asakawa, and his mother Raiko takes place. For Sadako's lore-based build, I think the perks Oppression, Dragon's Grip, Trail of Torment, and Blood Echo are fitting for her build. Oppression for the reason that she lived a short and rather secluded life out of the public's eye, losing her mother in the process at an early age, and being betrayed and ultimately killed by the man who she thought would care for her, ultimately. As the flavor text of Oppression reads, "Life has been difficult for you, so you will make it difficult for others." And that's exactly what Sadako did, which leads into the next perk, Dragon's Grip. Dragon's Grip has the effect that when you go to kick a generator, for the next 30 seconds, any survivor who touches it will become exposed for the next 60 seconds. The generators, in a way, are similar to the videotape that Sadako created, a commonly placed item in the environment that acts as a trap to anyone unsuspecting who interacts with it. In-game, this translates to repairing the generator that Sadako cursed through the perk. During the events of the Ringu movie, she leaves clues in the videotape to identify herself, for which Raiko and her ex-husband Ryuji begin to track her down. Some of the most notable clues begin with the word eruption referencing her mother Shizuko predicting the volcano would erupt, the character Sada and her eyes, and of course the well she was dumped and then left to die ultimately. When Yoichi watches the tape, it only increases the stress and race against time that all three of them face as they become more concerned with saving Yoichi above all else. The pain of knowing not only is your life doomed but your child's is completely unimaginable. As for Trail of Torment, it pairs very well with Dragon's Grip, as it also activates when you kick a generator. While active, you remain undetectable until that generator stops regressing, or a survivor is damaged by any means. The generator is also highlighted to the survivors during this time. The generator being highlighted also plays into the idea of leaving a clue behind for the survivors to find, and to ultimately activate Dragon's Grip. Throughout the film, we see that the deaths caused by the videotape creates pain and misery to the family and friends of Sadako's wrath. It's not until the end of the film that we learn a person can free themselves from the curse, but only if you get someone else to watch a copy of the videotape and pass the curse along to them. To save Yoichi, it's implied that Raiko asks her father, Yoichi's grandfather, to sacrifice himself by watching the videotape copy, so the curse will pass on to him, saving Yoichi, and ultimately ending the cycle of death. The flavor text of Blood Echo reads as the following: "The agony of one is inflicted onto others. In essence, it's the grief that the family and friends of the victims have to endure after their deaths." This also plays out through the perspective of Raiko through numerous times, from coming to terms with Yoichi having watched the tape, and her mourning of Ryuji's death ultimately. It also makes thematic sense that if you become cursed by watching the videotape, you have to more or less sentence someone else to death by making them watch a copy of the videotape, saving yourself in the process, but ultimately putting the 7-day countdown onto them. As for the best builds to use on Sadako, let's talk about her power. The Onryo, as she is known in-game, has the power called Deluge of Fear, which gives her two forms. The first form is when Sadako is manifested. While in this form, the Onryo behaves like a normal M1 killer with normal movement speed and a normal tear radius. It's her other form, however, when she's demanifested, that's more important. While demanifested, the Onryo is undetectable and can be seen sporadically within 24 meters of your location. While in this mode, she can also phase through survivors who attempt to body block her, and can teleport to televisions scattered around the map. When teleporting to a television, it will turn it off ultimately and place a long cooldown of 100 seconds on it. If you teleport to a television and survivors close enough, they'll gain a stack of Condemnation. Survivors can also acquire Condemnation when they retrieve a videotape from a television, which is then added to their inventory, and turning off other televisions with the tape in hand. The videotape item causes a survivor to passively build up Condemnation over time. However, it will pause if you decide to chase them, so you don't get any freebie Condemnation kills with it. When a survivor reaches 7 stacks of Condemnation, Sadako will get Killer Instinct of their location for a few seconds, and if she's able to down you while fully condemned, she will be able to moor you regardless as to whether you've been hooked all game or not. To remove Condemnation so you don't reach that 7th stack, you need to retrieve a videotape from an active television, and reinsert the tape into the television that's revealed to you. When performing this action, you will lose 3 stacks of Condemnation, letting you live to die another day. In terms of add-ons for her power, the Onryo doesn't have the best of add-ons when compared to other killers, but the first one I want to talk about is her meme add-on, the videotape copy. This doubles your blood points whenever you teleport and land a spectral strike on a survivor. The downside that when teleporting, it doesn't give any nearby survivors Condemnation. The spectral strike occurs when you hit a survivor shortly after manifesting, becoming an M1 killer again, which isn't too hard to perform. Unless you're going for a full-on Condemnation kill build, you're not going to be getting a chance to moor your survivor unless you're completely careless with their Condemnation. With that being said, since they increased the blood point cap in-game for each category to 10,000, it's easy to max out your Deviousness blood points with this add-on. Most meme add-ons don't have another one to synergize well with it to make it better, but Sadako actually does, and that's her VCR add-on. This causes all TVs to play her teleporting projection noise as if she did teleport, but in reality she didn't. And since teleporting gives the survivor a stack of Condemnation as a warning notice, they no longer have the advanced warning of Sadako's approach, making her even more stealthy. Some perks that can make the surprising killer more effective are Fearmonger, Tinkerer, Overcharge, and Surveillance. Fearmonger is here to exhaust survivors we can sneak up to who are working on generators, so as to decreases the chances of them triggering their exhaustion perks. And since Dead Hard was massively nerfed, it's mainly to deal with Sprint Burst and Overcome users. Tinkerer is here so when a generator reaches 70% completion, we get a loud noise notification, and become undetectable for the next 16 seconds. During this time, it's best to teleport to a television near the generator that triggered Tinkerer, so you can still be undetectable after projecting out from that TV. You can really use any of the other undetectable perks to help you out for this reason, as you won't remain undetectable after teleporting. You could use Dark Devotion or Trail of Torment, but I find those to be less consistent than Tinkerer, even in its nerfed form. Overcharge is to slow the generators down by regressing them by 200% after 30 seconds once you kick it. It also acts as a warning sign to return to the generator if a survivor fails the skill check created by Overcharge. And Surveillance is here in case they do hit the Overcharge skill check, because it reveals the ore of all regressing generators to you in white, and changes to yellow for 16 seconds if they go back to the generator and touch it. With Surveillance, you can also hear survivors working on generators from further away, and combined with your various means of remaining undetectable with stealthy teleports, the build comes full circle, allowing you to grind the survivors down over time. Now, if you want to go for a full-on Condemnation kill build and try to kill as many survivors through your stair, there's quite a few add-on options for you to achieve this. There's the ones that decrease the cooldown of a television that can't be used, there's the ones that spread Condemnation passively over time through various actions. However, I think the ring drawing and iridescent videotape are the best combination for this purpose. The ring drawing passively spreads Condemnation when condemned survivors heal one another, while the iridescent videotape causes the last 4 televisions turned off to turn back on when you land a spectral strike on a survivor. In order to build up the needed 7 stacks of Condemnation, you'll really need to slow the game down with your perks. For passive slowdown and to encourage the survivors to heal to get the ring drawing value, there's the wombo combo of Sloppy Butcher and Thanatophobia. Sloppy Butcher is here to increase the time it takes to heal through the Mangle status effect, and Hemorrhage to regress their healing progress if it's uninterrupted. Thanatophobia is to slow the generator speeds if they choose not to heal ultimately, and to keep them one-shot. However, since Dead Hard has been nerfed into the ground, I doubt they'll want to stay injured for too long. The problem is if you load into a lobby and everyone has a medkit, that's your cue to more or less vamoose and get the hell out of there. The other 2 perks can be pretty much anything you want. You could use Corrupt Intervention to slow their early game down and try to injure multiple survivors during this time. You can use Nurse's Calling to see survivors healing close by while undetectable, and there's so many other perks you can use really. Corrupt Intervention though is going to be my perk choice, and as a wildcard the last perk is going to be Darkness Revealed. This fairly new perk reveals the ore of survivors within 8 meters of a locker for a few seconds whenever you go to open one. And since generators spawn near lockers, especially in jungle gyms, and televisions spawn near generators, it's like a match made in heaven ultimately. The real MVP of the build is the iridescent videotape, because it just allows you to use your teleport and spreads Condemnation so much more consistently. This build is ultimately a mix of varying components, from trying to play hit and run so the survivors will heal, and aggressively teleporting to build up their bars faster, while trying to balance the need to hook and apply pressure to the survivors ultimately, and will require a good deal of decision making on your part. If you can pull it off, however, it can be very satisfying to moor your survivors. Keeping in that line, if you like playing super aggressively, then this build is meant for you. The perks you'll need for this are Save the Best for Last, Brutal Strength, Jolt, and Make Your Choice. These perks are designed to enhance Sadako's lethality, which is something she really struggles with considering her power is about stealth and surprise mainly. Save the Best for Last is here to reduce chase times by causing the survivors to gain less distance on her each time she attacks someone. Each time you hit a survivor who's not the obsession, you gain a stackable token that reduces your successful attack cooldown, meaning you'll spend less time recovering from it and can resume chasing faster. Brutal Strength is here to get rid of those pesky pallets and kick generators quickly by 20%. Pretty straightforward overall. Now, Jolt combined with Save the Best for Last makes for a pretty nasty combination, because each time you down someone, all generators within 32 meters of that down survivor explode and regress by 8%. And being able to down survivors faster means you can proc Jolt more often, which is a really good effect for the build to work. Make your choices here because the Onryo has the advantage of being able to leave the hook and return to it quickly with her teleportation ability. When a survivor is unhooked when you're more than 32 meters away, the rescuing survivor becomes exposed for the next 60 seconds. With these perks taken into consideration, there's quite a few number of add-ons that you can use to increase her lethality. Going back to the previous build, you can use the Eardoes and videotape to get your teleport ability back faster than normal. You could use the telephone add-on to decrease the survivor's movement speed in close range, or the distorted photo for a little bit of extra tracking. But I personally like the Well Water add-on, which increases your undetectable duration by 2 more seconds after manifesting. Those 2 extra seconds are long enough for you to teleport to a TV and demanifest before losing your undetectable status like you would normally after teleporting. That way you can go unnoticed in an area with line of sight blockers. You can also potentially allow you to get more hits at a loop because the survivors don't have the red stain to react in time. And if you're having a bad day and want to play the Onryo, this build will hopefully make your day a little bit better. As for the last build, I normally reserved for the killer's lore-based build, but that got done first, so I decided to make a bit of a more meme add-on build. Sadako has 2 add-ons that apply status effects to the survivors when they're close enough to a television that's active, and that's the Seesaw Cloth and the Rickety Pinwheel. These apply the blindness and oblivious status effects respectively, and turn the televisions into something more useful outside of teleporting. In a way, they act as boons, because they're being useful by hindering the survivors ultimately. Now, how much value you get out of these is subjective, because it really depends on where the television spawns, which is out of your control. Ideally, they'll spawn within the required 8 meters of a generator for the effects to last throughout the majority of the game. As you may have guessed, this is a generator-based build, and the perks reflect this as they are Gearhead, Disillusion, Call of Brine, and Thrilling Tremors. After hitting a survivor, Gearhead activates, and when a survivor hits a great skill check on any generator, their ore is revealed for up to 10 seconds thanks to Gearhead. Hitting survivor also activates Disillusion for the next 30 seconds. If a survivor goes to fast vault a pallet, Disillusion will cause that pallet to instantly break when they finish vaulting over it. And because the survivors know when Disillusion is active, they may decide to make a riskier decision to avoid having the pallet break before them, so as to keep it up longer. Call of Brine is included for both its generator regression and the information you can get from it. It also pairs very well with Gearhead because Call of Brine changes its generator's color to yellow while active, whereas Gearhead reveals the survivor's aura in red, so that way the colors don't clash ultimately as they normally would without Call of Brine. Thrilling Tremors is also here to provide information, especially because Barbecue and Chili no longer provides blood points, unfortunately. When picking up a survivor, all generators not being worked on are blocked for 16 seconds and are revealed in white to you, so the red ones are the ones that are being worked on and the ones you need to apply pressure to. As Sadako with Thrilling Tremors, if the TV is further than 8 meters away from the generator but still close, just teleport to it since the add-ons are not being useful in that case. And yeah, that is the last build called Boon Television. In terms of my thoughts on the Sadako Rising chapter, it was sort of rather uneventful since we learned almost immediately from the previous chapter released that Sadako and Ringu was coming to Dead by Daylight. Aside from the weaknesses of Sadako being a mainly M1 killer, and then power crept and then ultimately overshadowed by the Dredge the following chapter, he brought with her some of the most unique and synergistic perks that have been seen from a long time. Scourge Flood's Rage has become a personal favorite of mine, and has been used quite a bit from other killer players and content creators. Call of Brine, once an obscure regression perk, has become one of the strongest since they nerfed the old meta gen slowdown perks, including Raptor Intervention, Hex Rune, and Pop Goes the Weasel. And as for Merciless Storm, albeit niche, has made its way into skill check builds, as well as into the hearts of Doctor mains ultimately. Her add-ons, however, are just not up to par where they could be. Don't get me wrong, she has some decent ones like the Iridescent Videotape, Distorted Photo, and Ring Drawing, but for the majority of them, they affect trivial things or are generally unimpactful with how limited her base kit power is. It's my hope that she receives an add-on pass, or even a base kit pass that allows her to shine and just more or less stand apart from the Dredge by comparison. Before I end the video, I just want to say, if you made it this far into the video, I just want to say I'm sorry for not uploading more content consistently. A lot of people have been requesting Sadako for the series since her release, and I just really didn't want to disappoint anyone. And I probably struggled putting together the builds for her the most out of all the killers in the top 5 build series, probably the most thus far. because of my just general lack of knowledge and experience playing as Sadako, and what I previously mentioned with her power and add-ons being just more limited and just trivial, affecting things that don't particularly matter in my opinion. Anyways, I want to say thank you all so much for watching and supporting the channel. I'll see you soon in the next top 5 builds video. I'm Meepless3, and I will see you next time. Goodbye for now.